It never ends. It's a never-ending cycle for the Miami Marlins and their fans who have seen this act before. And what I mean by that is the Marlins they once again are in subtract mode more than add mode, reflected most recently by Jake Berger getting traded to the Texas Rangers for 3 prospects. We're going to dive into that. We're going to touch on the Juan Soto signing with the Yankees, whether that's a good business move, good deal, bad deal. We'll address all that today on Hitting with Holly. Here we are once again with Todd Hollandsworth. We've been taking a few weeks off. The holidays have been going on. This is going to probably be our last podcast before the first of the year because Holly needs some family time. I need some as well. But we wanted to dive into all these topics in this episode as we kind of close out 24. Todd Hollandsworth, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic, Joe. Thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure to be with you. Great stuff. I would expect today, as always, because it's been a good little run with us. I think we've had a lot of fun. I think we've gotten out in front of some stuff, and I think I really enjoyed even talking a little baseball during football season. My guy Trey's busy during football season, and we've been kind of grinding out the winter meetings and all the fun things that happen during this time of year. Baseball really has become a sport that really is 365, I think, in most people's eyes. But it's fun. You're right. We need a little family time, a little holiday time as well. So I'm very excited about that. And I hope everybody's families out there that you guys have a tremendous holiday season. And we're all thinking of you. And, well, I don't know about you, Joe, but I'm enjoying the sunshine, the cool temperatures down here. This is our perfect time of year.
Yeah, this is our San Diego kind of climate where it's a little chilly at night. We could light up a fire in the backyard in our little fire pits and roast some s'mores and do some fun things. I do a lot of barbecuing outside, smoking food and such. So I really enjoy this time of year. Everyone, please subscribe to the channel as we plow forward. When we get into 25, we're going to break down. We started doing a bit of breaking down these high school players, their swings, their pitching, their mechanics. We're looking forward to doing that. It's a lot. I know down here in South Florida, the baseball season never ends. Fall ball was a lot of fun. A lot like Trey, Todd's son, has played football. A lot of players down here are football players. Their season ends. They go and they play a little baseball before we get into next year, and it's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of really good ideas and some good things coming on the channel as well. But we're going to dive into Holly. Obviously, I know I always spend a lot of time on the Marlins and kind of do our own thing over here. But I do want to kind of address the Jake Berger trade. The Marlins are, this kind of it comes down to how much you value a Jake Berger. Here's a guy who had 3 or 4 more years of team control before he hit free agency. He's a guy who was very valuable to them in 2023 when they made it to the playoffs. Granted, kind of snuck in, but still got there. Hit 30-something homers that year, coming over from Chicago. 29 homers, and Holly knows Lone Depot, Marlins Park is not the easiest ballpark to homer in. He also missed time. 29 homers, obviously a clubhouse presence, somebody who's a veteran who can withstand what's going on in a rebuild. And, just kind of your thoughts on that value of that player, because clearly the Marlins don't value it as highly as now the Texas Rangers.
Well, the Texas Rangers do. And I think even if you look at the snapshot, just the last few years, without factoring in Skip, who we know is now with Texas, which is obvious. I mean, it certainly speaks volumes to Jake Berger and not only what he brought to the Marlins and who he is as a person, who he is as a player, but that it carried over with somebody. I mean, this doesn't happen all the time, but it really is a feather in his cap to the type of human being that he is, to the type of player that he is, to the type of clubhouse guy. You mentioned, culture and how important that is. Let's not forget the Texas Rangers just won a World Series a few years ago. I mean, this is a team that knows, they're coming off a World Series win. That front office, those people, that team know what a winning culture is all about. So, Joe, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I don't need to get crazy this morning. I feel like that's my best answer. I mean, you're coming off of a team in today's game. I'm not diving back into the time machine and saying, hey, back in 2003 when we won the World Series, I'm telling you, a current team in the current marketplace, in the current culture of our sport, just told you what they think of Jake Burger. So really anything I'm going to tell you is probably not even going to be as good as what the statement itself tells you. This is a championship caliber team that knows the value of a player like Jake Burger. So what does it speak to? It speaks to who he is. It speaks to the importance of culture. It speaks to what he brings to that team. That's a team that's expecting to win a World Series in 2025. They have plans and they have hopes, and they went out and were able to get a player that they believe is going to help them do that.
And, in Jake Berger, you noted Skip Schumacher, who obviously is now an advisor over there. And Bruce Bochy obviously is the manager still.
Yeah, he does.
And,
He knows a little bit about winning too, doesn't he?
yes, exactly. He's got his share of a lot of brass and a lot of titles and trophies, and knows players. And the thing is, obviously, whenever it seems pretty destined, whether the 2025 is the last year for Bruce Bochy in the dugout, Skip Schumacher pretty much is a manager in waiting. I actually love that Skip didn't just go to a lateral managing position somewhere else, meaning a team on a rebuild, Chicago White Sox or whatever, that Skip can now be in a kind of an advisor role. He could, not have to wear the uniform every day, could kind of see how the front office operates, because I think that's going to make Skip even more valuable when he goes back into the dugout. So you got two thoughts here, and it's very compelling, Holly, because you do have the Marlins and the Peter Bendix 100%, 1,000% analytics. They'll look at, and I called up his numbers here. We're looking at Fangraphs as there. Even he had a 1.4 WAR this year, if you want to believe Fangraphs. WAR is the be-all, end-all. Projections next year, 1.2. And one, and Streamer has him an even one. But no matter how you slice it, here's a guy that's projecting at 29 homers this year, projects to about 27, 26 next year, if you believe projections. Well, it's like that's the Marlins model, that caliber player in their eyes is not more than a 2 WAR player, so he is very interchangeable. But then you have Skip Schumacher talking about, quote, Jake Berger's a winning player. So you're talking about a man who's in Skip, who has been part of World Series teams, who really took a team that shouldn't have gone anywhere in 23 in Miami and got them to believe and reach the playoffs. And then they took everything away from him, and he still had them fighting. Granted, he lost 100 games in 24. But Skip Schumacher's definition of a winning player seems to be different than if you want to just. I mean, anybody could be a GM then, Holly, if they could open up a Fangraphs app and say 1.2, 1.4 WAR projection. What defines a winning player in Todd Hollandsworth's world?
Well, listen, everything that you said, and I'm not saying it against you, Joe, because I do agree with everything that you said. You set the table perfectly. But, the first word that comes to my mind is nonsense. I don't believe in any of that. I don't stand by any of that. I don't support any of that. I know that it's a number that defines a player, but I've yet to find a Fangraphs stat. No knock on Fangraphs. I love Fangraphs. Baseball Reference, love Baseball Reference. That defines the number that they put on a man's heart. And this sport's driven by a man's heart. This sport's driven by a man's desire, his heart, his integrity, his character, his want. How badly does he want it? I look at last year for Jake Burger and think, you know what? This young man stepped up when, listen, as a former Marlin player, as a former Marlin broadcaster, as a former, I live in South Florida. We know the Marlins. We've watched this traffic jam, this whatever it is you want to call it that goes on down here for years. But not everybody who comes here knows it when they get here. And, Jake Burger certainly didn't, when he was traded over, and he fit right in, and he, it was interesting. I think back to 23 and the trades that were made, the acquisitions that were made, how they helped this team, get over the hump. I thought they were good trades, and these players stepped up. They stepped in, and regardless of park factor and all this other stuff, just virtually every person that was acquired improved offensively, which is a testimony to a clubhouse culture, not the ballpark metrics or the factors or anything. It talked about the winning culture that existed, or the desire to, the finding a way to win, the winning tough ball games, winning, or if you remember 2023, winning one-run ball games
Correct.
all the time. I mean, this is a team that had a negative run differential, yet found themselves in the playoffs. And here you are finding a way to get it done, even with circumstances that don't, equate around the game. But with that being said, it speaks to who he is. He stepped above that, stepped into that role. Now everything starts to change here in 2024, and Berger goes out and performs at a pretty good level. Joe, let me say this: as a player, as a big league ball player, there is nothing more difficult than to know that you have to go out and perform every day in a culture that is already packed it in from April 1st, which we
Yeah.
knew was basically last year. Yet this man went out and put up very similar, I don't want to say identical, but close to identical numbers that he did in 2023, and was able to see his way through that. He is going to advance into a culture. So I'll add this: with all of those numbers that you just threw my way, I would be absolutely shocked if his numbers weren't better. His WAR will end up being better because he's going to a better place. This matters to the majority of Major League Baseball players. And in fact, I believe it matters to just about all ball players. The only players that I've ever seen that were really immune to the culture, not affecting them as individuals, were really just our superstars. And these guys are superstars no matter where you would put them. You could put them on a 100-loss team, they would still be sometimes, a superstar, because they're good at doing what they do. But the majority of even big league ball players are affected by their clubhouse. They're affected by their lineup. They're affected by the guys who hit around them. How many times I got traded and went from a place that maybe I was struggling just a little bit in a lineup to a healthy lineup that was functioning properly. And all of a sudden I found my stroke. I found my swing. I'm driving in runs again. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. My game's coming back to me. Wow, I'm happy again. See how that all works. Berger is thrilled that he's got an opportunity and a chance to go play in a ballpark and with a team that's got a chance to win a World Series. They have those level of expectations, and his numbers and he's going to get to spring training and he's going to be so excited. I'm sure of it. You know what I mean? That's just the way this works. And these are the things that people can't give you, because most people don't want to talk about that level of culture. The culture that you've developed here is one that you have to trust in the people in the Marlins, in the brass, in their way, and the players have to buy into it. But yet you're at the ground level again. So you're basically issuing that message to prospects. You're not issuing it to bona fide established guys who have gone out and had 30 home run seasons.
And talk to that, because everybody, the 30 homer season aspect specifically, Holly, because I love seeing it. We all can look and see, hey man, this prospect's got a lot of power. He hit the ball really far. The metric showed, he hit it 112 and it went 440 feet and it looked pretty easy swing, and the guy has some pop in there. And so everyone has, oh, that guy's got 30 homer power. And I'm like, and they used to do that with Garrett Cooper all the time. He's got 30 homer. It's like, until you hit 30 homers, don't talk to me about. They act like 30 homers are just routine. Because I don't know if Cooper ever hit 20 homers.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like you could say staying on the field, but you know how it is. It's not automatic that you're guaranteed 500 or 600 plate appearances, and the ball's going to just leave the ballpark 30 times. It's thrown around. We've taken what is projected, or what the ceiling is, or what the comp is, as the comp is the number that will happen. So speak to just how hard is it to hit 30 homers?
Oh, it's listen, we all get into spaces. I mean, that's a broad stroke. It's tough to really answer, but it is. But I mean, 30 home runs comes through consistency, comes through proven power, comes through lineup configuration, comes through finding your stroke early in the season, and getting off, to a great start. I mean, all of those things matter. 30 is a solid number. I mean, it's a big number. And the guys who do it consistently are guys who know their stroke, they know their swing, and have the ability to make adjustments throughout the season. Because the way our game works is you get hot for a week, you pop a couple of long balls and word's out. That's just the way it works. I mean, advanced scouting, all of that information's out there. They're making adjustments. You're not going to see that fastball low and in any longer if you've turned around 2 or 3 in a week. It's the way that it works. You're going to see sliders off the low edge. You're going to see fastballs up in the zone. You're going to see adjustments from the pitching staff, from the next team that you see 3 days later. They're going to be game planning about over what you've been doing if you've been swinging the bat. So, I mean, this is truly a game of adjustments. But guys who have that level of power and have proven it consistently are guys that teams are interested in, regardless of sometimes even if they're coming off a bad year. We see this example all the time. A guy may have a down year, but he's got a track record of doing it in multiple places. And teams are lining up to trade for certain individuals because if this guy's available, they know that he's done it multiple times in multiple places, and he knows he's got it. So he just has to find it again. And that's the name of this game, Joe. I mean, wouldn't we all love to just say, I'm a career 275 hitter and I just hit 275 week after week after week after week throughout my career? That'd be money in the bank, right? I mean, it would be great to know that we could do that consistently. But the truth of the matter is the sport doesn't really work like that. The sport is, I hit 345 this week and I hit a $190 last week, so, I'm feeding off of something. We're constantly making adjustments. We're, getting ourselves into good places and the right frame of mind. And, I continue to talk about lineup configuration and good, healthy hitters around you, what all that means. I mean, I think of Luis Ariz, the impact that he had. I mean, this is a guy who's a target like Berger, very similarly to the negativity that surrounds the value in WAR. Yet we all saw with our own eyes last year the Ariz trade happen, and all of a sudden the San Diego Padres lineup, which had been scuffling because they didn't have anybody really setting the table for the guys in the middle of the lineup, and so they're having disconnected at bats. Manny Machado's struggling a little bit early. Guys, they haven't found their swing or their stroke, and they're just not producing quite yet. And then all of a sudden, Ariz shows up, and their runs per game goes up by 1.5 in 1 month. And you're sitting there saying to yourself, well, how did that happen? Well, how do you think it happened? They brought in a guy who knows how to put the bat on the ball, was in a good stretch, was in a hot stretch, got there. I think he had a 4-hit game, his first game with the Padres. And all of a sudden their offense is up and running and they become a team with a legitimate shot at winning the World Series.
Yeah. And, there's no question that in those two guys, will go look, they got a 2 WAR or something like that year, because they'll ding them on another aspect, because everyone now is looking for that no flawed player. Right? That's kind of what the whole, when you buy into that Fangraphs mentality, it's a zero flawed player. You were a teammate of Miguel Cabrera. When the Marlins traded Cabrera, everyone said he couldn't play defense. Oh, that's not a good trade. Cabrera, he's a good hitter, but he's bad or he was actually a good base runner in my opinion, but slow, not fleet of foot, and no real position. He's too big for third. It was like, I'm like, are you kidding me? And now we're going to get into.
I mean, you got to justify the trade, Joe, and you got to remember that media perception is what it is. And so you don't want to look like a bad guy when you trade a Hall of Famer like Miguel Cabrera. So it's like the arbitration process. And I experienced it. Believe me, it's, you go in there and, you just walked out of a meeting, 3 or 4 days later with your club, and they love you and they think you're the greatest thing that they've seen. They're so excited for you. And then you go into the arbitration meeting and they start nitpicking at your game. And, there's little things that happen, they find the defense of this or the, whatever. It's just how it works. And so teams do this. So you can't always believe it. And the Marlins have been doing this for a very, very long time, Joe. So I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize. But I just felt the need to jump in there, and because that's what teams do. They're when you trade a player like Miguel Cabrera, you're not going to trade him and pretend that it's, roses and everything's perfect. You're going to nitpick his game, a Hall of Famer, and tell you, well, this is why we traded him. And we're all sitting there going, really? Because we all know who Miguel Cabrera is.
And it's probably a good moment to segue over to the biggest news of the offseason so far, and certainly the highlight of the winter meetings is the Juan Soto, historical, signing with the New York Mets. And it's funny because now Yankee fans and those who are detractors on Juan Soto are like, he's a 285 hitter. It's like, this guy's a future Hall of Famer. This guy, Yes, I kind of want to get your thoughts because that's also, we don't want to make this a complete Marlin show because it just shows the polar opposite of one team is justifying not adding and criticizing anyone who does add because everything's a foolish contract. To, well, if there's a foolish contract, 765 million for 15 years could fall into that category, except that money's going to one Juan Soto. Your thoughts?
Well, listen, I mean, it's a huge contract. I mean, it's hard to justify the number. I mean, you have teams that don't function, I mean, we're getting to the point now, and really this is just more of an indictment. This isn't it's so interesting to me because I feel like the Juan Soto contract really has nothing to do with Juan Soto. It really doesn't. And I mean that with all sincerity. And the reason I say it this way is because we all know who Juan Soto is. We all know who Juan Soto looks to be, the level of intensity, where his career is going, the fact that he has had MVP caliber seasons in multiple places. He's done the American League. He's done the National League. We know he can hit. We know his approach. We know how he affects lineups. We know how he affects the guy behind him. Sometimes he protects that guy. We look at the year that Aaron Judge had, and it would absolutely shock me if Aaron Judge, doesn't give as much credit to the fact that he had a Juan Soto in his lineup with the year that he had, knowing that the two of them were connected really all year long at the hip because it was a two-man wrecking machine for the Yankees really all season long while they looked for other guys in the lineup to start to produce more consistently. But the two of them together basically carried that team. I mean, this is a guy who's done it everywhere he's gone. Now, has he had some downs? Sure, he had a little bit of a down in San Diego. I get it. Who hasn't? But when you look at the value of the contract, to me, it's just more of an indictment of Major League Baseball and the unfortunate set of circumstances that the sport has become in that you're so top heavy and so bottom, the bottom is just so much lower. I mean, there's just a huge caveat in between, people who can have a Juan Soto and who can't have a Juan Soto. But that has nothing to do with Juan Soto. I mean, this was truly driven by the simple fact that the teams who have the money and the ability to pay for a Juan Soto know exactly what his value is. Listen, the Mets didn't spend 765 million, 800 million. It's actually $800 million if in fact it plays out the way that, Juan Soto wants it to play out. A team that has the money to give it to him. I mean, that's just really what it comes down to. That was the whole idea of free agency. Again, was so that your players would go to the highest bidder. Juan Soto doesn't get that contract if there's nobody else bidding. You know what I mean? That's what drove this to its number was the fact that you had multiple teams bidding on him. So it certainly bode well for him the year that he had last year, the attention that he got on the national stage, of course, during the postseason, and the simple fact that I think he and Judge made it look like the two of them were really doing it just themselves. And I think many people out there kind of really felt that was that, this was a two-man show and Juan was part of that. But with that being said, Juan Soto's value is through the roof. He definitely deserves to be paid in the upper echelon. If the bar has now become that, it's really just unfortunate for the game of baseball because it really has become so lopsided that, and we've said it for a very long time, Joe. You and I know this. The Marlins will never have a player like that unless they bring him in through the draft.
Yeah, and that's why they were so devastated to not get the first overall pick because an Ethan Holiday has in their eyes and the eyes of many, can be a franchise, caliber guy, a face of the franchise. So that's clearly what they're banking on. Where I think the Marlins have to kind of decide, and clearly they made their choice. They're just going to not. I talked about this a couple of months ago that this blueprint of never getting the guy 30 years old or signing one, to any money is kind of in place, and they're kind of confirming it. They literally may not have a 30-year-old on the opening day roster.
Yeah.
Big and point being is you draft a college guy, 20, 21 years old. You basically let the colleges develop you because you're not really investing any serious money in development people because you're hiring Division III coaches and probability people to be your lower level, coaches and anyway, and they're basically just instructors like putting balls on tees and catching, retrieving balls in the outfield after they do their scientifically designed hitting drill. So they're doing that. They get these guys basically close to double A ready once they draft him, doing a hitter, obviously. Give him 2 years in the minor leagues at about 400 at bats each. He's got about 800 at bats. He's up in the big leagues by 24, and he's in free agency by 27 and traded before he turns 30. And then the cycle repeats itself. It's kind of what the Marlins model is, where they look around, they see Michael Conforto 1 year deal to the Dodgers for 17 million, and that's foolish spending. Well, the market now is about that. So if the Marlins can't pay 17 for 1 year on a player with a track record, then when are they ever going to? Or is this just going to be a 20 a 50 $60 million payroll every year?
Well, I mean, listen, to their defense, I understand that the revenue that they, can spend every year is very different than everybody else. I mean, they are not a team, they're not an organization that can spend the way other teams can spend it. But the unfortunate part of the narrative is that they haven't figured it out, and they haven't had a front office figure it out yet. They've had little bits and pieces and little runs here and there throughout their history, but the general consensus is this: that nobody believes in you but you. And I mean, that's okay. I mean, you got to have a front office right now. I'm sure that a lot of their meetings are, kind of around the idea that nobody believes in what you're doing because there's no evidence that it works, and it's unfortunate, but that's what they're fighting against. So, their ways, whether it's Bendex and the people who are in the front office, Peter, in that group, nobody believes in what they're doing. The fan base here doesn't believe in them. Major League Baseball doesn't believe in them. You hope it works, but they have to prove that it's going to work, and that's just really what it comes down to. It's just that simple. It's unfortunate. I know those are probably, harsh words to some Marlins fans, but it's the truth. I mean, it really is. How can you buy into what they're doing when you don't have evidence that what you're doing is going to pay off with, competitive teams that consistently get above 500, teams that are, competing for a playoff spot, not necessarily year in and year out, but at least every 3 years, to where you're in a position where your fan base believes in that. I mean, you have other markets that are similar to Miami's that have found ways. I mean, the Tampa Bay Rays have proven that. The Kansas City Royals continue to prove that. Even Pittsburgh has had, little glimpses lately of improvement, in places where, they're not able to spend the same number of dollars, but they, are stepping back, taking a step back with the idea that they're going to be taking a step forward in, say, 2 or 3 years. I mean, it's just hard to believe in what the Marlins are doing because we just haven't seen that yet. And to your point, the process gets really drawn out when you can't keep any of them. When you don't keep any of those players, you don't give hope to the guys that are in the system. Right now, if I were a minor leaguer getting drafted by the Marlins, I would just see it as opportunity, knowing that this isn't my final landing spot. When I got to the Dodgers, I was like, all right, I'm going to be a Dodger for the next 20 years. Like, that was my heart. Like, this is what I want to be. This is who I want to be. I love Tommy Lasorda. I love our organization. I love what we're doing. I love how we talk. I love how we think. I love how we play. I want to be part of this. We're winning. I'm moving into a winning culture. This is an organization that wins championships. This is a big mark. Like, there was a million reasons to buy in. Now, it didn't go that way for my career. I mean, I was there for 6 years, 10 years professionally, but six as a big leaguer. But with that being said, there were bumps in the road. There were, lots of highs and lots of lows, and a lot of everything, really. And then I moved on, which a lot of players do. But my point in saying that is that I still had a system that I believed in. I believed in who I played for, and I believed in myself, which was, key to getting to the big leagues. And they saw that as a benefit. And listen, we're moving in the right direction. You're going to be part of this, and they made a way for me to be a part of that. And for that, I'm forever grateful to them because they're the ones who gave me that opportunity. But with that being said, I don't know if young players think those same thoughts about the Marlins. I mean, I just don't know how it's even really possible because there's no history. There's no extended history. It's not like, okay, I'm going to play great in the minor leagues, get myself to the big leagues, play great, and they're going to pay me financially, and I'm going to be here and be a cornerstone player for an organization that doesn't have any cornerstones. So that's really what I'm saying, is that they're an organization that doesn't have any building blocks. And we don't know who those building blocks ever will be because the building blocks never stick around long enough to actually be part of the foundation.
How much of it is the fact that this organization, more probably the only time in their history there's like no human feel, no human, it's all data driven. Everyone's replaceable. Everyone's, looked at a certain way. And turnover is, we'll just, the next person, next man up, basically. It's like, and there's no ever any, Skip was the last hope of that for me. Somebody who's like a real dude, somebody that could
Culture.
kind of, hey, how are you doing today? How's your family doing?
Yeah.
Are you okay? What's going on? Who do they even, they have no baseball people around. They just have a lot of cold people who are just, they treat the fan base like they treat, and our good friend Paul Severino just got it on the broadcast side. uh, no department, no level, no one connected in any capacity to the Marlins is valued,
Right.
and they're certainly made to feel that way as well.
Well, the same people who are getting, that are doing the hiring are the same people who are getting fired in 2 and 3 years themselves. I mean, this is
Yeah,
not something that has just gone past. I mean, this is just not, a front office that, that, oh, this is just a ruthless front office. They're just, really mean, and the constant turnover, and everything's about the bottom line and a dollar. That's not really the case, because nobody's been immune to it. Not even ownership has been immune to it. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? I mean, ownership's
yeah.
turned
Derek
over.
Jeter got canned.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Ownership has been turned over so many times that even the people who are doing what you just described are having it done to them themselves.
Yeah,
Maybe they get to stay a few more years, but the reality of that is, it's a very simple answer for me. It's that the culture doesn't work, and see, that's the tragedy that they fail to realize as an organization. Again, I know it sounds pretty harsh to say, but it's the truth, in my opinion. Is that when you are a team that doesn't have the resources that the big dogs have, you have to create an identity for yourself. And that identity is so far beyond numbers, and predictability, then in fact, it's just the opposite, because I look at numbers as heartless. Really, that's what it is, because it doesn't get, this is the first thing I said at the top of the show, was that the heart is what drives a major league, it drives a baseball player. There's so much failure in this game, Joe, centered around great ball players, that you have to have a big heart to play this game. Positive attitude, positive energy each and every day. You went 0 for 3 last night with 2 punch outs. You know what I'm saying? And you got to come back to the yard less than 24 hours later and get ready to play again. This isn't like the NFL, where it's like, okay, you play a game on Sunday and you've got a week to get ready for your next game, and it's easy to throw all that negativity out of your mind. It's not. It's not always easy to do that, especially when you're, 0 for your last 15. But the point is that you have to build a culture. You have to build a connection. You have to build a family, and find a way to do it through the heart, through the integrity, through the character, through the culture of who you are. I've watched in my lifetime many organizations go through these swoons that you go through. They're at the top for an extended period of time. They've hit rock bottom. But when they seem to hit the rock bottom, yes, numbers are part of this. Yes, analytics is absolutely vital, but it shouldn't be the driving force. What should be the driving force is the atmosphere and the culture that you're trying to create. And they've chosen to do just the opposite. So it is become heartless. And that's unfortunate, because I even talked to many Marlins fans down here, or people who, I'm not even sure they would call themselves Marlins fans. They just like to go to big league ball games when their favorite team comes to town. And they say the same thing. It's just, when you go to the ballpark, it's just got that. You know how you go to some ballparks and you have the same crowd, the same number of people in one stadium, the same number of people in another. And in one place, you feel something very, very different than you feel when you go to Marlins Park, or whatever it's called now.
yeah,
Forgive me, but that's the point. It's like it's a very different feel, and it's not this, rallying around your ball club, rallying around your team, grinding through, some tough seasons with the idea that this is really going to pay itself off in a few years, and watching that process. There's a lot of fans out there who love this process of, bringing up the young guys and watching them develop, and feeling like they're invested in the team because they were invested in a ball player when nobody knew who he was. Yet he went out and hit, 300 his rookie season with 15 home runs. And the following year, he went out and hit 290 with 20 home runs. And you're starting to watch the player mature and establish himself. And now you're invested. You've watched him play, 100 times throughout your life, and you're like, man, this kid's a really good ball player, and we got something good going on here. Yeah, we had a 90 loss season last year, but we're moving in the right direction, and
Yeah.
fans buy into that. Fans absolutely buy into that. They'll buy into the process. You see it in Kansas City. You see it in marketplaces where they don't have the resources to just go out and
Oh,
get free
Colorado.
agencies. Yeah, Colorado. I mean, at some point, it's going to turn around in Colorado because I know that in their minds, their hearts are in the right place. But they have they're fighting a really uphill battle because of the teams that they're competing with in their division. But they will figure it out eventually. And even now, and every now and again, they take a leap of faith on a guy like Chris Bryant. And I know Bryant hasn't worked out, but it still shows you that when they believe they're to that spot, they're willing to take some risks. And the Marlins haven't shown that.
No, like I can't see who would any player with a track record would come here
No.
willingly.
They wouldn't.
I mean, there's just no evidence, like you say.
Right.
You could be from here, like a Castellanos who wanted to play here, and obviously it changed when Jeter left, but he knows the history here.
Let me tell you this:
He
if
knows. I mean,
Jeter
he
was
was a
able,
teammate of Miguel Cabrera. He was, he,
if Castellanos was able to come here, if Castellanos was able to come here, and they would have found the resources under those circumstances a few years ago when that was even being talked about, I can almost guarantee you he'd want out of here by now.
Of course, because he would have liked, that opened the door to bring him more. Obviously, he's a really good player. He's not
Yeah.
an ultimate superstar. Don't get me wrong that he would have changed the course of everything, but he would at least have been, the alternative is
You'd have brought
where
fans
he
to the
got,
ballpark. People come to see him. He's
yeah.
a local
I
guy.
mean,
I mean, it's just so easy, Joe. It's
he's
not
not
that
a role
hard.
player. That's the
Right.
thing. They're selling role players like they're all-star caliber players, and that's kind of my frustration too. Because those who are informing aren't calling him on his. They're putting him out. Oh, look at his top 30 list. This is remarkable. There's no all-stars on that top 30 list. They're big leaguers,
Right.
at least not all of them, but some have a big league profile. But it's not like every people are like, oh, how come it's different here when you were covering it? Okay, well, they broke up your team after '03. Well, back in '05, '06, you still in '06 you still had Miggy and you still had Dontrell. You had Hanley Ramirez.
Right.
You had Josh Johnson.
Right.
You had guys that all became all stars. Guy won batting titles, ERA titles. Then when they moved those guys out, they had Stanton. And then Yelich and Ozuna and Jose Fernandez. Every one of those guys were all-star caliber guys.
Right.
Now you're okay. What makes this different is you're promoting. You think a 24-year-old Connor Norby at 5'11's going to be Manny Machado at third base. And no knock on Connor Norby, who has a chance to be a solid everyday guy, but he is being thrust as this franchise face of the franchise nucleus piece for them. And
Yeah.
that's to me the frustration because no one in the media picks up on what I'm like blatantly saying. Your top 30 list is meh. I don't care if Baseball America thinks it's the 13th ranked system. What difference does that make? You're
Well, it
measured
doesn't
by your big
translate it
league.
into wins. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, there's a very small, at least in my opinion, a small percentage of people who even care about that stuff because now you're getting into the depths of projectability without it, whether it's legitimate or not. The bottom line is at some point you have to win on the field. At some point, these players actually have to turn into the players that you say that you think that they're going to be. And unfortunately for them right now, the evidence is not in their favor. It's just not working. It doesn't, even if those players, I mean, again, this is me speaking to the culture of what you're creating and the clubhouses that you're looking to build. It's not there. It just doesn't exist. I mean, I mean, like I said, people ask me all the time, and I speak to this as a young player. I was the 1996 National League Rookie of the Year. I had a nice career, didn't have a great career, not a Hall of Famer, not close. Just a good player who played a long time, really, more than anything, and ended up playing in a lot of different places, which is good. Had good runs in certain places and struggled at times in some other places. Did a variety of different things. But the point is this. When I was a Dodger and I was a young man, trying to find my way, nervous, stepping out onto my first, the first big league field of my career, looking at, 60,000 people in the stands is, you want to talk about your heart skipping beats. I mean, that's how it works. But I was surrounded by a culture that took care of me, a culture that believed in me, and a culture that watched me struggle early, go through the ups and downs that a lot of young players go through, and matured me, helped me, and protected me. And that's really the key right there, Joe, is the word. Young players need to be protected. I've always believed that. You've got to protect them with good quality, solid veteran guys around them, whether you're building for that season or 2 years down the road. Those younger players, I think Miggy Cabrera would, if you were to ask him today, of course, his career defines itself. And I know the conversation becomes very individualized when you look at the number of home runs that he hit and you look at the length of his career and the power and all the things that we could talk about when it comes to Cabrera. But my point in saying that is Miggy walked into an insanely healthy environment. I tell people this all the time. That was one of the best clubhouses I've ever been in. We won a World Series. Of course it was, in 03. That's the team that Miggy was brought to the big leagues with. Were there expectations on Miggy? Sure there were. But I was the guy who got lost his job to Miggy and was there for him every day, rubbing his shoulders, telling him, you got this, kid. You can do this, waiting for my time to pinch hit. That's what my job was, and that's what my role had become. But we had veterans on that team that were willing to go in and out of the lineup. Think of Mike Lowell, who was basically having an MVP caliber season, who got injured late in the year. And, most teams would run him right back to the lineup the minute he was out of the cast. Yet, Mike had to kind of work his way back, but our offense was rolling. Mike was sitting next to me on the bench for a few games until an opportunity presented itself to get him back in the lineup. People don't remember those stories the way that I remember them, and I know them because I was with Mike. But there wasn't one word of complaint from Mike at the time. He was waiting his turn. He comes up with the big home run in Chicago. In the NLCS, and next thing you know, Mike's back in the lineup every day. So there you go. I mean, it's just kind of how it works. But you want to talk about a healthy culture? That was it, and that's what Cabrera grew up under. That was his indoctrination to his dreams. Was a place that welcomed him, got him through the ups and the downs, and continued to encourage him and build him in the right way. Does that exist here? How is that possible?
Well, who's going to be,
players who've got more than 2 years experience on the field?
Yeah, and you got a rookie manager who was who's coming in, from the Dodgers, and Clayton McCullough, and he doesn't pick his bench coach. It's all picked for him. His staff's pretty much going to all be picked for him. So we know who's running the team, and you noted earlier, Holly, about stretches going 0 for 15 or 1 for under this system. That ain't flying because everyone's a role player and a platoon player, and you're only you could be the 7 for 10, but a lefty's coming in. You're not going to get that 11th at bat because the odds are going to be to go with this. So it's going to be this system of play. That's the only way I see them doing it is, everybody, because no one's really a star that you're going to, okay, you got, like you say, a young Miggy, or let him develop. He might be the wrong example because he's a superstar and a Hall of Famer. But, just a regular, everyday big league guy who you basically want to see how he does against a lefty or righty. That's out the window here because it's going to be try to win that day. And we're going to just throw this player, the matchups, all this. He lines up better, so he's getting this moment. You're getting that moment. So everyone's going to be dealing with abbreviated 250 at bat type seasons.
Well, there's nothing worse as a player than feeling like you're on an island, and that's basically what you just described. Like I said, I mean, I grew up in a place in Los Angeles, even at the time of the '90s, where I knew that there were so many other people there that were there to help me to get better, help me to get through the ups and the downs, help me to get through the head traffic that I had going on, the nervousness. It comes with the territory, and with the level of expectations. I mean, think about it. You work your whole life to get to the big leagues and play, you're not, this game is individualized in the sense that you've got to go out there and play. You got to perform, and your numbers define that. And the better you perform, the better the numbers, the more you get to play. I mean, it's really how it works. But when you're in an environment where everybody's doing that exact same thing, you're not creating a culture, but you're not really creating a safety net for your younger players. they're not. They're just not being raised the right way, Joe. I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, that's just really what it comes down to me. I mean, it's true. I mean, I'm so amazed. Like, when we see, I was thinking on this young man just the other day, Rooker with the Oakland A's. I mean, the
Yeah,
years that he's been
he's a
able to.
good player.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, I mean, I also know who's running that club is a guy who I have a lot of respect for, in Mark Kotze.
yeah,
And I know that there's a lot of dysfunction, there's a lot of things going on over there. But I know for a fact, without even being there, I haven't even seen an A's game, but because I know the character of the man who's running the team, that that he's growing up in a healthy environment. And we watched this man who was a DFA turn into one of the better hitters in the game. And now all of a sudden you've got a bit of a building block right here in front of you, and they're hoping to keep him. But the idea is that he's in a healthy environment, and all of a sudden it unlocked his game. And there's a huge difference, Joe. People don't really realize this. There's a huge difference between minor league baseball and big league baseball. Huge difference.
yeah.
Yeah, the minor leagues are the proving ground. There's no doubt that you've got to do what you've got to do in the minor leagues to get you there. But the big league ball game is very different. It is a big step when you go from the minor leagues to the big leagues.
No, you mentioned a really good point, and our audience being that we're South Florida based, the Athletics now they're no longer Oakland, obviously. They're
Right.
so
Sacramento, I think, for a few years.
yeah. um, it's like, yes, we know that they've tanked. We know that they've gone through some really rough times, and they're very unsettled. But we also, you and I both know people that work in the Oakland, or now, excuse me, athletic system, who are currently working there. Manny Colon comes to mind. John Hughes, who the scout who did so many good things with the Marlins. He's actually the scout who drafted. They got the Montreal Expos to draft Tom Brady. He's with the Athletics, among others, and everyone could say they all love working there. Like even though they know that's a tall task ahead of them, that there is a level of, and I know their owner gets hits and he deserves it. He's involved in the whole relocation aspect of it. But the people that they're working for, the Athletics are viewed as a very desirable organization to work for. I know I was in Arizona during the MLB Combine in June, and obviously the draft was at the All-Star game. But that combine, where I was doing my work because Chase Field only had X number of, they didn't have the press box open and I had to write. So they put us up on the suite level. The Athletics had about, once you got off the elevator, Holly, on that floor, the Athletics had about 30 or 40 people in that room. The Marlins had guys sitting on the floor in the corner, like two, But point being is they're all invested in that event, and so you can tell they're trying to do things right. It hasn't manifested at the big league level yet, but it's an organization, like you say, with Mark Kotze obviously being a former Marlin as well, that they are viewed as a place that cares about people and will do their best to work with them and develop them.
Yeah. And that's healthy. I mean, that's my point, is that you've got organizations that, the Marlins they're not the only team, working from the bottom up. I mean, it's just, they're not. And, you want to get yourself to a position where your fan base can buy into. I know that there's extenuating circumstances, and really I just meant to mention Rooker, but whatever their circumstances are out there, notwithstanding, the Marlins have been doing this exact same thing. I mean, they have a big, beautiful ballpark. See, like, that's the first thing that comes to my mind, is that they should be miles ahead of where the A's are at, because
Yeah,
those things are already established. Those things are already, like, you have a big, beautiful building. Now you need to learn how to fill it. It's just
yeah.
that simple. I mean, that's what you're looking to. And so what does that speak to? It speaks to culture. It doesn't speak to, well, we have the best food in South Florida, on the promenade level. I mean, that you know what I'm saying? That doesn't
Yeah, we saw
sell.
those promotions.
Yeah, but it just doesn't sell. It doesn't sell. People who go to baseball games are baseball fans. I mean, you're not pulling from, we used to say this in Los Angeles all the time. We would go through a bad stretch, lose 5, 6 games in a row. Something would happen. I was there for a couple of 90 loss seasons. but the stadium was always packed. And that was really just more, we're in the middle of a major city. We know that we're drawing from just everywhere. And, going to a Dodger game was an event. And, a lot of people will go see a couple of Dodger games a year, but even just that would fill your stadium. So yes, they have a much bigger city, they have a much bigger fan base, they have a lot more history, and so even in their down years, it's not so down as it feels like it is here in Miami when it's a down year and nobody goes. I mean, it's just like you're in this big beautiful building and there's 500 people watching a game, and half of those people are employees.
Yeah,
It's, you have not quite figured out how to tap into the heartstrings of your fan base. And there is a fan base here. There is a fan base that would love to believe in something, but they've been rope-a-doped so many times that they're done. They're just like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not making the
yeah.
effort to drive 40 minutes from up north to Miami to go see a team that's not even going to have players on the field that I could identify with last year.
Exactly. Boy, I think we're throwing a lot of truth out there, for our audience. That it's
It
we're
is
we're
what
laying
it
it
is.
out there, and I think it's important to get the message out because this is what's going on. We could ignore it and just let a few people sit around say this is wonderful, and some people want to buy into whatever. But there's a pulse, there's a heart in this sport, and that's why we're so passionate about it. But let's take it full circle with Holly, and as we wrap this up, kind of in a nutshell, we'll take it back to Jake Berger because he kind of represents this whole theme of today. Is he's a baseball player, right? We could answer that. And I'll be first to admit I was probably wrong on my evaluation on Berger, and even when I heard about him, because he's a perfect example. He doesn't completely look the part. He's a little bit too heavy. He's not the most athletic. He's a lot of swing and miss in the game. There's a lot of things you could check to say why you would not want this player. Yet the more you watch him, he's hitting a homer in the ninth. He's hitting a double when you're down four in the seventh inning. That makes it a 2-run game. That put himself in position to hit the homer in the ninth. He's keeping everybody up in the dugout. The game's never over in his eyes. And you start looking, and you're like, this guy just kind of has a knack of coming through and making those around him a little bit better. Whether that translates into the 1.4 WAR or wherever they want to put that nonsense. All I know is Skip Schumacher saw it, and the Marlins in 23 felt it. And they would have felt it in 24 with him, but they didn't give him enough team to do that. So what makes a winning player? And we'll get out of here on what your answer is.
Well, I mean, I think I've covered it pretty well today, but I mean, integrity, character. I mean, it goes beyond the numbers. I mean, it's interesting because you talk about his WAR and that value, but what that expectation means in Miami because of the situation you've created for yourself here is that you're looking to him to be somebody that he truly is not. He's going to go to Texas and he's going to be what do we say, a cog in the wheel. I mean, he's going to be part of it. He's going to be part of the machine. So when he has his little slump, he may get a day off. He may get somebody else that's going to come in and play for him. You know what I'm saying? It's just the level of expectation on him is very different. He's going to be part of something. He's not going to be the guy like he was in Miami. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Right. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's almost like miscasting players. And Miami has been notorious for doing this, miscasting players. Luis Ariz is an immensely talented hitter. Does he ever have some things in his game? Sure. When you watch us all enough, we all have flaws in our games. We all did. And he does. But so does everybody. But guess what? He doesn't have to go be somebody he's not in San Diego or wherever he lands next. But everywhere he's gone, he's been a tremendous addition. He's been a tremendous addition to a team that was ready to take him on. So he doesn't have to go to San Diego and be the superstar. He wasn't the superstar in Minnesota. Wherever you send him, this is a guy who's a really, really good ball player, knows how to hit, knows how to put bat on ball, which is a skill that's just completely, for the most part, just disappeared. We don't even talk about it that much anymore.
Like 4% K rate or something.
Well, right. I mean, I can think of so many guys. I talk about them all the time. And, JP Juan Pierre, dear friend of mine, JP was that guy. And, his career went to a lot of different spots. Everybody loved to have him because when he comes in, this is what he brings. This is what he does. But if you miscast him, then you start to look at the warts in his game, so to speak, and that's where things seem to turn. And it's unfortunate, but in Miami, it feels like that's what we look at a lot more than what we should be looking at in the value. And F-WAR doesn't define that, and that's my point. He may go to Texas and his F-WAR maybe 1.5 next year, and they may be standing on a podium at the end of 2025 talking about what an integral part that Mr. Berger was in the addition to this team and how he helped in our clubhouse. He helped in the batting cages with the younger players. And oh, by the way, went out and popped 25 home runs. I mean, whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter. You see what I'm saying? It's like, okay, that's the point. See, the teams that are preparing themselves to win are looking for the key pieces that they can add that are going to fit into their culture, that are going to fit into who they are and help them win. Nobody looks at Major League Baseball or looks at a Major League Baseball team and says, okay, that's a slam dunk. Does anybody truly believe? I mean, let's be honest, right? I'll ask this question real quick, and I know we're tight. But does anybody really believe that Juan Soto signing with the Mets signs them up for the World Series for the next 15 years? That's not going to happen.
No.
That's not going to happen.
No.
Right. So what is it a guarantee of? No, it's a guarantee of that you're going to probably be contending for a playoff spot more consistently. And if you win 2, maybe 3, let's say he plays out 15 years, 2 or 3 World Series in 15 years, that's amazing. And that's the point. So it's like, how does he fit? Juan has to fit. Juan at $765 million has to fit what they're doing with the Mets. And they believe that he does, so much so that they gave him $765 million. But that's my point. What are you trying to fit in Miami, Joe?
No, I mean, they're trying to fit in whatever the budget says.
Well, nobody knows. Yeah, nobody really knows. Yeah,
nobody knows. They just want to stay under budget, and we know Sandy Alcantara is making $17 million, and it doesn't make any sense that he's here. So, whenever the timing's right, if he wasn't coming off Tommy John surgery, he'd been moved already. That's what we know. That's pretty much in a track record. For those saying it's not true, the track record that's absolutely true. Because they don't retain, and we could kind of end it on that. Holly, thanks for all your help on this year, and it's always a pleasure. I value our friendship, and we're gonna, as we roll this into 25, it's going to be a lot of fun because Holly's going to be doing stuff on the high school level as well, and we're going to really hammer home the grassroots. We're going to touch on the big leagues when appropriately. We're going to hit hard when we feel we need to, and we're going to give praise when we need to as well. But one thing we share in common, and when we believe in South Florida, is it's an amazing baseball community, and we are going to do our part to help grow the entire baseball community, provide hope for the next generation. Holly, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, you and the family, Happy New Year, and it's great having you as always, my friend.
Thanks, Joe. I greatly appreciate it. It's been very humbling, a lot of fun. Enjoy being with you. We certainly love talking shop. It's very easy to do, rolls right off the tongue, and we have a lot of fun doing it. I'm really looking forward to a great 2025 for a lot of these young guys down here, a lot of these young high school guys that I'm starting to meet and see, just around doing the fall ball thing. It's wrapped up, a little bit of a break, but you know what? This is baseball in South Florida. This is the gift of South Florida, is that, you get to January 2nd and baseball practice starts. I mean, here you go. It's just a lot of fun to see, and certainly love to be with you, and certainly part of the fabric.
Appreciate that. And we're going to have highlights of Holly's kid hit a homer. We're going to get that up on the site at some point in the near future as well. With that, everyone, please subscribe to the channel. We're growing real well. I thank everyone. I'm going to top more than 2.4 million before the first of the year total views on the channel, which is amazing since I really relaunched this in mid-February. So thanks to everybody. Thanks to Holly. That is Hitting with Holly. And we will catch everyone in the next video.